Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to the 9th episode of Season 12 of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Brown. This is the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. Today's episode is a very focused conversation I had with my pal and previous guest, Nic Apostoleris, about this season's album, Echo. When we chatted way back in 2022, the first time Nic was on the show, he told me that when I reached Echo, that he'd love to come onto the podcast and talk about it. So on this episode, we dive specifically into the lyrics on this season's album and speculate on possible meanings to specific songs, as well as overall moods and intent that the album may hold. So as a professional in the mental health field, Nic is always very careful to present his opinions as just that, but they're very thoughtful, very well considered and articulated opinions, and it was an absolute joy to spend a couple of hours in Nic's company again. And even though he didn't want to focus on his music, do go check out the links in the episode notes if you do want to listen. It's personal, passionate, and I personally love it. I have both of his records on vinyl, so maybe you'll love it too. Who knows? For now, though, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Nic Apostoleris.
Tom Petty. Tom Petty Project. Tom Petty. Hey, Tom Petty Project.
That's a good cold open for the show, I think. So you been? You been good?
Yeah. Music is one of those things that gives perspective and gives healing and connects people.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I go back with you a long time. This is just our music connection,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's interesting psychologically that, right? I mean, I don't know. There must be all kinds of studies that have been done into why that is. Why music is this universal language that you can't really even explain why you connect with it. And then so when you find someone else who connects with it, and especially when you find out it's someone who doesn't share you, I mean, I think we have similar ideas about a lot of the world, but when you find people who are on the other side of the political spectrum or the religious side or whatever it might be, and yet you still find that connection, you still come together through that commonality. It's a really interesting psychology, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I wonder sometimes we build these, we build these belief systems, and a lot of them are deep. They're deep. They're what we were taught when we were really young. And then others are intellectual, and we learn them and we start getting identity from believing them. And music can get into that too, right? Because then you can be in a musical tribe and it can get really, really distinct without a difference, like whatever subgenre you think is great versus another subgenre that's a sellout. And that's what I've been trying to get away from, and then overly intellectualizing it, which is easy when you're not a musician like me. Like I can play some tunes and I can make some nice tones, but I'm not like my son. My son is, classically trained. He's a jazz composer. He knows music.
I push back against that anytime you say that, though, Nic. You know this, right? Because to me, as you just said, music is about connection, and when you write from the heart, and when it comes across as being authentic, and it's an extension of you as a personality, then you are every bit as much a musician as Rachmaninoff or Bach or Mozart. I mean, there's no difference in that way to me, in that emotional and that spiritual connection. I don't think.
I guess that's the only thing. It's not. This is certainly not about my music, but if I could be genuine in what I'm doing. And it shows what I'm feeling, or it shows how I think I can express it. And it's not pretense, or it's not, fatty or whatever. And it's just whatever I've got, I try to do it like legit.
And I think you pulled that off, man. I think you pulled that off, definitely.
And the segue, obviously, is that, it's easy to do that when you've got, you got no label that's pushing you. It's easy to do that when you've got no audience that turns on you. It's easy to do that when, it's for you and for your loved ones. And it's hard to do when, and I'm segueing, to Tom Petty, because he was, creative genius, singer-songwriter, par excellence for really 20th century American music, to my mind. But he's also a boss, and he led a business, and
Yeah.
he cared about the top 40. He cared about that. He was a great student of music, of course, and he understood the roots, and he appreciated the roots, and he brought out people. But he also cared about being on top.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like I said, we're segueing very nicely into Echo here, because I think way back the first time you and I spoke on that very first podcast that we did together, you'd said that, Echo's a very special album, a very specific album, especially for you. And that when I got to Echo, that you'd love to come back on and talk about it. So this is what we wanted to dive into today is Petty, comes off the back of Wildflowers, gets through Songs and Music from She's the One, not a great experience. They do another Fillmore mini residency, and they go on tour, they go a little bit of tour through Echo. But coming into this album, he's at a place where obviously his life's kind of fallen apart. He's at this point he's struggling with heroin addiction. His divorce is finalized. He's living on his own. He's away from his kids. So it's not really a set of circumstances where you're going to think, okay, well, this guy's going to hit the top 40 and write a set of songs that are going to be the next Full Moon Fever or the next, you're just not going to, it's unreasonable to expect that. And we don't really get that in this album either, right?
No, we don't get that. But to me, and this is where we could differ, and I think we do come at things from a little different perspective. So for me, this is a scary place. Echo is scary. I didn't realize quite how scary it was until you sort of said, yeah, think about Echo. And so I started diving into it. And I never do this, but I actually took some notes to make sure I can be cogent about it, because
Right.
it's such a charged environment. And you hear that from, the conversations with Tom Petty. You hear it with Mike, you hear it with Benmont.
Yeah.
You hear from them about what's going on, and then others. And, I thought, I was like, today, it's like, they didn't, like, I felt it in reading Mike's book. He really didn't want to go where Echo was. He didn't want to go there. Benmont has been even more blunt. It was almost like, and I don't think I made this up, I must have heard it somewhere, but it's almost like the Scottish play.
Right. We don't say the M word.
Don't even say it, because if you say it, you bring. And so what? This is what got me like, wait. There's stuff here, because you follow you kind of follow the emotion, follow the affect, follow the fear. There's fear there as they're talking about it. It's not just, oh, that was a bummer and we stank or whatever. No. It was like there was something going on here.
Yeah.
And they knew it was beautiful. Maybe Tom Petty knew it latest because of Dana kind of reintroducing him to it as he got through it all. They knew it. And I'm going to, bring this up now because it was something that emerged for me a little at a time as I was listening to all the tracks over and over. Because I've been a deep dive with this album for probably a couple of years.
Yeah.
Not a great place to be for a couple of years, man.
Right.
But diving in, and then after reading Mike's book, I really am wondering. And once again, it's a disclaimer, but it's a true disclaimer. I don't know, like, anything. I know what I read.
Yeah.
And the thing I want to say about I know what I read. So let's say that the reporting of what someone said is accurate. That doesn't mean that that's what that person felt or believed all the time. It's what they said.
Exactly.
At a particular point in time. It doesn't make it the truth, revealed truth. It is something that someone, even the composer, the author, said.
Yeah.
Right? So I take that it's important, but it doesn't mean that it's definitive fact.
It's interesting, isn't it, how that happens, where you hear, you'll hear people say that, oh, Tom didn't like this or he hated that. And so it's almost like it locks people into, oh, that means it isn't good then, or that means, if Tom said this is the best song I ever wrote, that locks that into, well, that obviously then is, when really, like you said, I mean, you're asking someone in a specific moment And you catch me in a really good mood, then I'm going to be way more effusive in my praise about anything you ask me about. If I'm really, really down, or if I don't get on with you, or if this interview's not going well, whatever, you're just going to react differently. And so it's strange that we, with personalities like that, and I don't think this does happen in your personal life because you're constantly revising that opinion of someone else based on subsequent conversations. But with someone famous, it's almost like whatever they say, that just becomes etched in stone, and people won't
Yes.
waver from it. It's a very unusual place
It
to
is.
be as a personality, right? When everything you say is kind of recorded and written down and then held up as this, well, this is permanently an all-time true,
And it's not fair. And actually, I have a couple of interpretations of songs that I think are probably not right. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
what Tom was thinking, but it's, you put this piece of art out in the world, and it's a piece of art out in the world, and then people are going to react to that piece of art. And so I've got some things to say. Where I wanted to close the loop of where I was going is, I think Benmont and Mike knew that they needed to step up in a very different way for these sessions.
Yeah.
And I've of course seen your Tom Petty project, the ones you've done up till now. It's probably about half the album. And you picked up on one that I missed, where they were actually doubling each other, so in a coordinated way. Which they never do. They play off of each other usually. They don't do it coordinated. So they were like giving a double boom
Yeah.
on a very simple riff, but that riff was very powerful. I didn't even notice it as many times until you pointed it out to me. But then, and we'll go through it. There are times when those guys just say, and this is my imagining again, this is why it's not true. It's just my imagining. It's like, Tom, we got this.
Yeah.
Tom, we got this. And he would bring in, this is why I wanted to ask you, I said, are there any demos, like stripped down demos? Because as I, read what I read and listened to the music, I see like Room at the Top as he's coming in. I think there's a reference to it. It might have been in Zollo, but it was a reference that it was really sparse when he came in. It was really, it was bleak almost. And then One More Day, One More Night, I'm imagining a similar, here's what Tom came in with.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's put it into this. Okay? Because this thing is about as stark and as bare. The bones of this are stark, bare, raw, naked. Can we sustain that emotion without some power, without some uplifting? And I can just imagine them looking at each other and goes, like, we got this.
Yeah. Well, he did it. I mean, Mike did that on, if you remember, on Let Me Up, I've Had Enough, because the song It'll All Work Out. Tom had written and sort of given to Mike and said, because obviously it was, the marriage was in trouble way before it all sort of escalated and then broke down in mid-90s. But he'd given that song to Mike and said, look, I can't deal with this right now. Can you finish this? And of course, I think that's when you have that, that's not just a musical trust thing. That's a brother trust thing, right? That's like, this thing is safe with my friend. He'll know what I need, and he'll know that I'm not there, I'm not present right now, and that he can carry on and sort of interpret where I want to go with it. And I do think that does come through on this album. I think you're right, where there are sections where it's really the first time you hear Benmont lead in quite a lot of spaces. He adds a lot of coloring on Wildflowers. He sort of has grown into the mix a lot, especially as the albums go on. But this one, you really do feel like, because you get to Mojo, Benmont's leading all over the place and he's just tearing it up. But this one, you do start to hear that stuff coming through.
So Room at the Top, those dueling solos.
Yeah.
We're used to Mike having the amazing solo, after being sort of a complimentary lead guitarist. You know what I mean? He plays what he needs to play, but then once in a while he'll go, oh yeah, but I can do this.
Yeah.
And then why?
Yeah.
But then here it's like they play, and some people might think it's two guitars, but it's not. Benmont's playing like a second lead guitar almost.
Yeah.
At Room at the Top, as they play off each other. And I hadn't heard that before. And it really felt like the two of them were going to say, we're going to carry this to another height.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and what a statement song to open the album with too, right? You think about, there's a lot of emotional weight on this album throughout. And then there are moments where you think, Tom's deliberately stepping back from that just to give everyone a bit of breathing space. But Room at the Top feels like a very specific choice to lead the album with, to say, this isn't going to be this is not Full Moon Fever. This is not Let Me Up, I've Had Enough. This is not Damn the Torpedoes. This is something else. And so kind of get ready for it,
So I'm going to say this about that. This is about this as an album, because people of a certain age remember albums as a thing.
And I'm one of
This
them.
is right. This is not MP3, a selection of MP3s. You put it on whatever shuffle and
Yeah.
it comes out. There's an album here, I think. Again, I don't know. This is me telling you what I think, and I see it as two very purposeful decisions to open and to close the album. I see those as like the frame of the album. And what do I think the jewel is? I think the jewel is the title track.
Yeah.
And then you've got more of a picture with the other songs. But the thing is, and hopefully we'll get to One More Day, One More Night. I see that in a darker frame than others might.
Right.
So I'm not seeing this as a triumphant, yeah, I'm down, and here's the triumph, and we're going to end it with some place that we weren't.
Right.
In a way, I see him as framing this distress with these very powerful, different views on it. And then Echo is just to me, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
A different type of thing. And these are songs, they're art. He said it. This is not direct autobiography. We can always infer, we can always apply what we know about his life and, put it in. But this is art, and he puts in frivolous things.
Yeah. Do you think, though, with that, Nick, because I've, when you read through Paul Zollo's book and you sort of listen to interviews with Tom about this period, and he's saying it's not autobiographical, do you think that's him deflecting it, though? Because, I mean, you read some of the lyrics in some of these songs, and like you said, you listen to Echo, you listen to Room at the Top, even something like Billy the Kid or, Won't Last Long. These songs, they're about someone who's in pain. So
Hey, man,
I don't think you can separate those two things, right? Really.
I got two takes of those last two songs you said you're probably not going to like. So we'll
Go
get
ahead,
to that. But see, I don't know, because I'm so far an outsider. I don't know these
Of course.
people. And I really don't even know the people who know these people. So I am at the lowest level of being an analyst here. I don't have any idea. But his daughter said, Adria said, like, he said, well, it's not autobiographical. Then she says, well, there's so much that's autobiographical. So
Yeah.
I just listened to her, who was right in the middle of it, and she felt it. So that is somebody there. So it's like, it's not completely a waste of time to look into this. It could be revealing. But all I'm saying is people are funny, and people give, the breadcrumb the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it's not literal, and it's not one-to-one, and we don't know.
Yeah. For sure. But I mean, that's where, I definitely subscribe to the Dylan philosophy on that, with lyrics about, well, it doesn't matter what I wrote them, but it doesn't matter what I meant by them. It only matters what it means to you when you hear them, because that's what art is, right? It's that interaction with the person, with the art. And so when we sort of paint that picture on the canvas that Tom gives us of this pain that he's going through and this tumultuous time in his life, I think that's valid. You know what I mean? And whether or not he consciously meant it, subconsciously meant it, didn't mean it at all, I think it's completely irrelevant, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I wouldn't be spending this much time in my life listening to this thing if I didn't think it had some value to it, right? But I just have to say, I don't know. I don't know. I get a theme, and this is why I think of it as an album. It's like, to me, there's a theme, and it's like the theme for me is the promise of recovery, and love. But it's the promise of recovery from the wreckage. The wreckage is all around, and there's no like set plan or set path to recovery, to a new love that'll be stable, to recovering the love that has been damaged.
Right.
Filial love that's been damaged, and the friendship love, and all this. There's no guarantees. He's on the edge, and the outcome is in doubt. And this is how I see this whole album is it's not a looking back. Look where I was. Wow, I was down and out. No, he's down. He's out. He might be out for the count,
Yeah.
and he knows it. So this is a little different from looking back. Oh, I had a bad divorce, and now I'm back on the road again. No, I think this is from the depths.
It's interesting that you just said something there that I hadn't really thought about in that way, but it isn't a nihilist. It never becomes nihilistic, right? There's no song or no sort of theme on this album that is, I'm down and I don't care, because there is a moroseness that some artists do wallow into, and rightly, I mean, that's fine. I mean, if you're down and out, I understand why that comes through, and some of the sort of like The Cure and some of those bands that were a little bit more on that downside anyway could drift into that. But as you said, through the need for redemption and through all those kinds of themes that are threaded all through this album, there is still always that little chink of light that you can see is not giving up. He is fighting, so this isn't sort of Tom just folding his cards and saying, I'm done. You definitely have that sense that he's trying to get back to the surface of whatever pool he's drowning in.
I think Mike said it, that Tom never lost his core.
Yeah. Right.
Mike said it. He was worried that Howie had lost his core, that Tom never lost his core.
Yeah.
He had that strength. He needed a direction. He needed to be, but it was, to my mind, it was in doubt. And his best friends, his guys, they weren't expert in this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mike says he didn't understand hardcore addiction. He didn't know for Howie or even for Tom, like what to do, what to say.
Yeah.
Such a wonderful guy. I hope you spend time on Mike in future podcasts, because what a gentleman, a gentle soul.
Yeah.
A good man emerges in that book.
Yeah.
Caring and like going way beyond what he was equipped to do from his childhood, and just how this man grew, and like him looking back at this era and go, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to help. So, and I've always thought Tom was pretty optimistic. He was optimistic about the country. He was optimistic about how deep-seated problems could get redone.
Yeah.
I remember he was optimistic about the South in some ways.
Yeah. Do you think he was also a little bit, I mean, obviously, I would say, if we go back to the Southern Accents era specifically, also a little naive about it, I think, in some ways, right? Where he had that sort of that childlike view of, this is the South that I knew, and this is the South as I approached it, rather than the South being actually what it was, which I think definitely, as he matured and as he aged, he went back and sort of revisited some of those themes and even gave interviews on the subject. But there was definitely sort of a little bit of naivety in there as well, I think, maybe.
Well, I'm pretty defensive about him, because what he came out of, he was about as enlightened as any human could be expected to be.
Yeah.
His attitude towards women, he was, not a racist guy.
No,
he
not
was
at all.
At all. Right? He had a good moral compass. Obviously loved his mom, and got a lie out of that. But he was way above peers that should have been a little more enlightened than him throughout the 80s. And I think he had that soft spot, a nostalgic spot for the South, which to me, I remember that era. There was hope about, there was a thing called the New South.
Right.
The New South. And I know we're going off into another album, but he had this optimism that, okay, this is a new start. That horrible symbol isn't what it meant. It's what it might mean.
Yeah.
I'm defending him.
It's not what I meant, is basically all what he said, right? I mean, and you took that for real, because like he stopped shows and said, stop waving these flags. That's not what I meant. You're getting it wrong, That's explicit. That's not
me. I think you know me enough that flag repulses me.
Of course.
So, but it's not about me, right? It's about who was he at that time where he had big, and this optimism. He was about as patriotic, and I don't mean waving the stars and stripes and all that. He had a belief. American Girl. I mean, where does he start?
Yeah.
All right, this guy's American and proud and a wonderful critic of the country.
Yeah.
A wonderful critic.
Which all true patriots should be, right?
He was a critic, and he developed a heightened sense of perspective that allowed him to be a better critic also of himself. And I think, some of that can get pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So get pretty heavy on it. Do you mind if I talk about Counting on You? Because I got a little take on that plays into this a little bit.
Of course, yeah. This is, like I said, we were talking a little bit offline. I said, I really want to give you a platform to just discuss your thoughts on this because, again, I mean, if somebody who says, I want to talk about this album in depth, dude, the floor is yours. Go any which way you like. Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Because this is not a song that I never really connected with Counting on You. So you've let me dive in a little bit more. And I think about Tom not liking modern technology, right? He didn't like the internet, didn't like satellites.
Yeah.
He didn't like all that stuff. But he was of an era. He was born in 1950. He was born in the muscle car era.
Right.
He was born in the era where guys worked on engines. Guys had their cars on blocks in the yard, and they did it. And a lot of your identity was for the people around him, not him, because he was a guitar guy, he was a singer.
Yeah.
But a lot of people's identities were in their cars. So when I heard this song, I was going back and I heard Power Glide, El Dorado, and Aeroplane. And I thought the South, as I'm bringing this to here.
Yeah.
It's sort of the romanticized, very American rural life. Guys of, teenagers, older teenagers, young 20s, polishing up their rides to impress the girls. And then you've got this progression. You've got this transmission. Power Glide is like a simple automatic transmission. And then you've got the car, but a fancy car, an El Dorado. And then you got an aeroplane. So you're going like, you got this, kind of, I think it was a 2-speed automatic Power Glide. I could be wrong. Maybe with it over. And then you got an El Dorado, but then you're on my aeroplane. And that three-syllable pronunciation to me was like a Southern pronunciation.
Yeah. The over pronunciation of it. Yeah.
Aeroplane, just a little rustic almost. It's just how I took it. I thought of Ricky. I'm going to talk about Ricky and Dickie in a bit, but I thought about Ricky and Dickie.
Yeah.
Who were on this album. Right? I thought about Ricky and Dickie on the side of the road with the hood up.
Yeah.
With this. So it's bringing me to a nostalgic take on his rural Southern upbringing. To me, it's like, and then it brings it to the present with what I'm seeing is like the promise again of recovery. And he's seeing that his recovery in the present is dangerous because it's placed on another person. I'm assuming it's Dana.
Right.
And somebody's going to let him be down. He's hearing that someone's going to let him down. He knows it's dangerous. The word out there is that somebody's going to let him down.
Right.
When you're on the edge and you're starting to put trust in someone, and then other people are saying something's going to let you get. Well, I read, I don't remember, was it Zanes? Might have been Zanes, about when Dana came in, she was not trusted.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can see that scenario though, right? I mean, this young woman who was a fan initially and all that, you can see where some of that trepidation would come from naturally. Thankfully, obviously, it all panned out well, but
it all panned out. So here you got him thinking back, and this is what he does in this album: is multiple timestamps, multiple, who's he speaking to? Scenarios. So here, I hear him hearkening back to Dirt Road in northern Florida,
right.
And then fast forwarding to his current situation where he's starting to put some hope, and maybe some last of his hopes, in this lovely person.
Right.
The people that have been around him that he may trust are not as trusting. So that's where I'm counting on you. It's like, I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you. I know there's risk here.
Yeah. Cool take, man. You said too, though, and I'll just add to that sort of bouncing around, flitting around different times. I definitely hear that even musically, because I've said this album as a whole is more than any other in Tom's catalog, you know, Mudcrutch, Wilburys, whatever. It's an album that calls back to previous eras and almost sort of presages future. The stuff that sounds like Mojo, the stuff that sounds like Into the Great Wide Open, the stuff that it's kind of a really schizophrenic album in that way that I almost feel like, as you're saying there, if Tom's thinking about this idealized, you know, his sort of idyllic childhood in the South, whether that's like a lifeline that he's just grabbing onto something that he can kind of grab his bearings with, you know?
So here we got that. So that, like the image is a dirt road in the South, cars around, and not fancy cars, but
Yeah.
you know. And then you got Lonesome Sundown. Love I Found means too much to me, right? And then he gets a phrase: "I stand accused outside the law." Right? Accused. Now here's someone with some, you know, long-term marriage, difficult time, long-term marriage with challenges, serious challenges, right?
Yeah.
That transition period of such difficulty, promise of the future. He's seeing that promise of the future and with everything around. This is, again, me imagining. This is not real. Folks, this is me, right?
It's interpretation, you know, absolutely.
And then to feel accused, because the accused comes up again in the album. Accused, but accused not of something illegal. I'm accused of something outside the law. It's not a legal thing. I'm being accused of doing something wrong. But what am I being accused of? Accused of love, right?
Yeah.
Right. What do you think when he says, he's talking to himself, redemption comes, this isn't it, to those who wait. Forgiveness is the key. So he's, to me, this is, again, a complex set of subjects he's talking about. It's his daughters, those relationships, is Stainer, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because, I mean, as you said, we all read almost sometimes what we want into lyrics, but redemption comes to those who wait, forgiveness is the key, and I wish you love and I wish you hope, please believe in me. That's, I mean, I think I said that in the episode too. That, to me, I wish you love, I wish you hope, please believe in me. That sounds like it's sung to children. It sounds like it's sung to a child. It does not sound like it. You know what I mean? Because there's a need in it that almost sort of transcends that. It's not a lover. It's not something you would say to a lover. I don't think you get that sort of desperation. It's something where there's a deeper. There's no choice in this, right? For him, it's like he has to have this, otherwise that redemption might not come, and he might not get through it if that doesn't come potentially.
Kev, I'm wondering if the redemption was about, redemption is the key. Forgiveness is the key, and redemption comes to those who wait. Do you think, I'm wondering if he's talking to himself there, if he also feels wronged, because, you know, accused, he's saying accused, and that word comes up again. He's in a tough spot. He's struggling to make things go. And I'm almost wondering there if he's trying to remind himself to be patient and let what's coming at him, which is probably some angry stuff.
Yeah.
Let that go. Be patient. Get through it. But it's so raw that it's just very hard. And he's almost like, I'm imagining almost telling himself that. And I could be off. But this is where I see him switching a lot about who's he talking about, who's he talking to. It's art, you know. It's not an essay.
He switches POV and he switches tense, and he does that all the time, Petty. And this is why I think the greats are so hard to really interpret with any clarity a lot of the time, is because they write specifically, but they've got that generality in there, right? Where they say, okay, well, I'm not gonna, because who knows what these lyrics were originally, because we know that Tom was a judicious editor of his own lyrics. There could have been stuff in there that was more personal that he thought, you know what, that's got to come out. Like, that doesn't scan as well for people who aren't me in this moment. So you do wonder about that. And I think that last verse, like we're saying, redemption comes to those who wait, forgiveness is the key. That definitely feels introspective. But then I wish you love, I wish you hope, please believe in me. Could be, because you could be talking to yourself, but it's that flip back to out of the back of that, talking to his kids. So I totally agree. I don't know either, but it's a great lyric either way. I'll say that, and it's very true.
He's an artist, and he's an artist here. It's almost it's almost it's such a free flow of ideas. Now they were blocked. So then you've got, Ruben giving him some nouns and verbs
Yeah.
to plop on the refrigerator and figure out some new ideas. I think, there's a lot of spontaneity, like swinging, right? We know that.
Yeah.
That and then as a one take, he just kind of
Isn't that crazy?
came up with it.
I mean, just let's talk about that for 1 second, because, as a songwriter yourself and as a lyricist yourself, that's just freakish. It's the same thing with Wildflowers. It's the same thing with this. No one should be able to do that. That's just not something a human being should be able to do. It's a craft, something that interesting and evocative and coherent. Even though it's like snapshot, there's a coherence to it. You think that's just a different level of artistry, I think.
It is different. I mean, I can imagine, calling out those swinging cats. I can imagine that being riff, but I can't imagine the story. Now that story, once again, goes back to the hard scrabble. These are not polished Ivy League people we're dealing with here, right? With the mother-in-law and everything that's happening is real people in really tough situations that I could imagine he grew up around or projected onto people he grew up around.
Yeah.
So that again brought me back to that. I don't know if you want to call it a hard scrabble past, but it felt deep South, it felt Northern Florida. This is going right back to that well again. And sometimes when you get in really tough spots, where do you go back? You go back to what's familiar.
Yeah.
Where these characters come out, and it's in more of the songs than I ever really thought of it. This is a very Southern, kind of adolescent, childhood and early adult evoking album to me. And you might not see it because it's sometimes hidden in there. But, for all the fun of swinging, these are some pretty interesting people that he created on the fly.
It's kind of, to me, I think I said this in the episode, I don't remember, but it's almost like it's set in the same universe as Something Big and Spike, where you've got this kind of, like you said, it's a downbeat, sort of a depressed neighborhood, this area where you've got all these really colorful, interesting characters, and Tom just spies them out of the corner of his eye, and he constructs these narratives for us to just dip into just for a minute or two, right? So clever.
So clever. And, how could you do it on the fly? Well, maybe these were people that he'd been thinking of for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
These internal characters, and that, and again, champion strong women. It just wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. This guy needs to be, everybody needs to be reminded of how far ahead he was. And he was just, a normal guy in some ways. He didn't, he self-made. I'm using all of his cliches, but he found a way to get the insight himself.
You said, so, I mean, Megan Volpert touched on this when I interviewed her. She wrote that brilliant book. She wrote a fantastic book about Alanis Morissette, a very strong feminist thinker and feminist writer. And she said that Petty didn't approach his female subjects like most. You look at the 70s rockers, women were, for the most part, they were just props, right? They were, that's all they were in songs. There was never any real depth to them. Petty never really did that. They were never just, it was never sort of, they were never objectified. They were never trivialized. They weren't key players in some of these songs, but they were never that. They were always, full people. They were full participants in whatever narrative he was constructing.
Now, now take that. And the next step to me is they're fully equal in his eyes.
Yeah.
Right? And they're fully accountable.
Yeah. Yes. Because you can't have one without the other.
Can't do it. So that's part of the strength here, is that these women characters, he's not even doubting, are these fully equal, agents of their own lives and their own future. He's like, of course they are. And that means there's some responsibility for how she hurt my feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So he goes that next step of like, yeah, you're as important as I am, and you're as full and rich of a mind and person as I am, and you're not a prop, and you're not an object, and therefore, wow, that really hurt.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, you know where that's leading us to the song.
It's leading us to the song, but we do have just a little lift in the clouds in Accused of Love, even though, the lyrics in that one are still, they're a little bit dark, but the melody of that song and the bounce of it and the very birdsy, Beatlesy 60s Britishness of it is just wonderful. I just love, 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 love the melody of that song.
So, as I say, we are who we are. To me, I skip over that one. I've
Okay.
skipped over that. Why? For all the reasons that you said. He's doing this style that he can do. I mean, Heartbreakers can do anything. Just an amazing pop flight band. Just, unbelievable. And they do it, and it's technically perfect in spite of everything. And it sounds great. To me, it's a little polished.
Right.
And there's so much stuff going on that this is a song that is great as a song. But in my own head, I'm more interested in what's happening in this recording process. What's happening in the studio? What's happening to these people?
Yeah, for sure.
And this is more of a song construction in a genre that they obviously appreciated. I saw it as a Beatles nod.
Yeah.
There. And I think I found a Stones nod later in the album. So, so to me, yeah. And I just like the thing that struck me on that was really, once again, the idea of accused and then playing that out into another little scenario.
Yeah.
He's dealing with accused. You don't want to start getting like, overly sensitive. In other words, because he's using accused a lot. I'm feeling accused.
Yeah.
Well, there's stuff he's doing in life that could make people not all that happy.
Right. Goes back to accountability again, right? Yeah.
Accountability.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are things, and he could be prickly about it. Rick Rubin talked to his daughters about his substance use. He did not like that.
Yeah.
He did not like that. That felt out of line. Was it out of line? That's for everybody to make their own decision and for nobody to make a decision because we weren't there.
Yeah.
But he wasn't all that fully self-aware of everything because you can't be when you're in that situation.
Of course, yeah. That's why, that's why we have, when we get into legal proceedings and we get into those things, you have, compos mentis, you have to be capable of making a decision. And when you're in the depths of that sort of stuff, yeah, your decision-making ability is impaired.
You can't. So can I go on to that song? The one you can't talk about, can't mention.
Let's get into it.
So, it feels like, these different scenes. They're different scenes. And I couldn't make sense of it until I gave myself the freedom to see it as distinct scenes. And there is something of an arc in my mind, but it's confusing in some ways because it's not a straight narrative.
Yeah.
It's not a straight narrative, and it won't just make sense. So as it opens, which is very gentle opening, this is again my feelings. It's quite visceral feelings. It's very gentle. I had an image. I had an image of him on a porch, and there had been a storm, both a storm emotionally and maybe a storm physically, in the environment, meteorologically. And there's this quiet after a really bad storm, a bad fight,
Yeah.
a bad scene. And it gets quiet. It can get quiet. And then I just had, again, just imagine him sitting there and, the opening lines. And then, we both know where to go.
Yeah.
Like, there's wreckage. So come on and sit down next to me and have a moment of peace amidst the wreckage.
Yeah.
Just happened. And then I don't know again, but I think he does see himself as part of the wreckage. Like he's been an agent to make some of this wreckage happen. Put down your things and rest a while. We both know where to go. Okay, that line, that little couplet there. It's gracious. I hear exhaustion in that from him. And trying to join. And the idea of, we both know where to go. That's an amazing line to me.
Yeah.
We've both know where to go. Like, I know, and it's not an easy out here. We both know where to go. So come on, sit next to me.
Yeah.
Running from this. We're here after the blow up. This is just my thinking. This is not what he thought. This is what it evoked in me.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, Daddy had to crash is why I thought that he had some self-reflection that he was part of this, a big part of this crash, right? And then jumping, Daddy had to crash. He's always halfway there,
Yeah. And that's how you speak to a young kid, though, right? You reference yourself in the third person. Quite often we do that with our kids when they're young, because there's just something about that that's easier for them to latch onto. So it's got that. To me, it's got that very narrative sense of just the way it's written, right?
Just the way it's written, right there. To me, that's how I read it. There's some hint of, by using that third person in Daddy and the third person pronoun he's, are we hearkening back to his, he had some issues with his dad having blow-ups and everything. So there's also a present, and then going back to that hardscrabble past that he had with his father that never really resolved. So to me, it's both in the present and going back.
Do you think that probably would have been, if we're sort of taking that interpretation where that is colored by his childhood, that must have been quite scary to him, that I hope that I'm not doing to my kids what my dad, you know what I mean? Obviously the situation was different. There's no physical abuse, there's none of that, but there is that sort of worry that, it's the Phillip Larkin poem, they fuck you up, your mum and dad. They don't mean to, but they do. It's got that sense that we all worry about that with our kids. We don't want to screw them up with our actions, but I wonder if that must have been a scary thing to confront, especially a scary thing to confront artistically. If you're, bearing yourself in a song and writing that down, it really is kind of just putting it all out there, right? It's putting that worry and that anxiety about that right on the page. It's a difficult thing to do.
Very difficult, very difficult. And I don't understand the line. I don't pretend there's any more of that. Do you have a thought on that, Kev?
It's almost like it's like you said earlier in one of the other songs about that internal monologue, where sometimes you'll think a thing, but it's the accumulation of a bunch of other things you've been thinking about. So there isn't a straight line through it all, right? So no, I don't pretend there's any more of that. There is no coherence with anything that came before it. I think it's one of those things. It's just almost like a separate thought that's just been pulled in because it works. And of course, the other thing too we should say is Tom's a songwriter, so he's always looking for the line that fits and the line that works. The syllabic meter's right, the bounce of it's right. It sounds right in that place. So sometimes we will get those lines in that are disconnected, but they still feel right. And I think that is, it does feel right. And I think there's actually when a song is, or when a line is a little bit enigmatic and a little bit mysterious, I think it just adds to the whole thing, right?
It sure does. So here I feel like a hinge, because then it's like then, okay, now there's a new scene. I promise you this winter, I'll worship you like gold. Okay.
Right.
So I just go to that being sort of future oriented. Maybe this is the hope thread.
Yeah.
Dana and hope seem to be pretty intertwined in this period of time. I don't know, but that's kind of where I went. He's really trying not to be so transparent. So I don't know what he was going for.
Right.
Ride Your Train Forever, Electric Fortune. I thought of Casadega, Electric Fortunes to be cool. That was a little like a community of fortune tellers.
Right.
So in like, you know, in the countryside, there's a lot of magic. In all countrysides, there's magic. And they're a little, you know, who does magic? And you know, electric fortunes to be told. I thought of Casadega, and I thought of him linking Dana with magic.
Okay. I like that.
Right there. Now, right after that, boom, here's another scene, and I hear everybody does a tone change. So there's boom. So everything is this. It's like after this, it's hope for the future a little bit. Could be the daughters. It could be the future with Dana. And then I feel a sharp switch of tone and audience. Yeah, I don't question or even celebrate all the joy you took and then gave back too late.
Yeah.
Okay. Different audience.
100%. And just it's sledgehammer power in those lines. Like that's just, you know, we talk about this lots in the art community where some songwriters are poets and some poetry does work in songs, but not always because they are different forms. But to me, that works as both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If that was almost even that whole verse, or if you take the pre-chorus there and I don't want to question, and then you go into it's the same sad echo, that as a self-contained piece, as a self-contained thought, is extraordinary.
I don't have the lyrics sheet in front of me, but I think the next line is, it's the same sad echo when you lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boom. I mean, what are you doing, man? That says that's heavy.
It really is, yeah.
And then like now I'm starting to feel him expressing what I take as anger or even a little jabbing. And I don't know if this is at all right. It's when you try to be clear,
Mm-hmm.
same sad echo around here. The idea when you try to make sense of that, I heard it in an argument. Let me be clear. Let me be clear. Let me be clear about what I'm saying. And taking that and almost, hard to say it's weaponizing it, but it's like, it's the same sad echo. Now he's in his head and he's hearing these, trying to be clear in arguments, in
Right.
difficult arguments that are now replaying, echo of arguments. Trying to be clear. Let me be clear. I didn't do this. I didn't say this. I didn't mean that. It's starting to get very heavy, very, very fast. And then another switch to the desperation of his situation. I woke up right here in a pool of sweat, right?
Yep.
With a box of pills and you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the recovery theme. Like in this time, the word recovery was not as mainstream as it is now. There's a whole understanding that addictions are addressed through a process of recovery.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, a lot of buy-in to that across. But I think this is pretty early in popular culture to be talking about recovery. And I think this is a recovery moment. I'm going to keep my head, going to keep my cool. I'm so in love with you. So I guess I'm getting from that just how low things were getting in the moment. And I always think, so in love with you at this point, I'd just go to Dana at this time of his life.
Of
I
course.
just go. She's helping him potentially go through it. And then that line of "in another world, nothing was like this. There may have been a girl, but there never was a kiss."
I know.
What's that? I mean, that's genius.
It is. It's one of those where you look at it, and again, as a songwriter, you just look at it and laugh because you think that's one of those lines that if you wrote that in a song, you just quit for the day. You just say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to put my pen down because I'm never going to write anything better than that today. That's just, you know what I mean? It's got that weight and gravity to it. Not in a heavy, not weight in that way, but it's just so good that you think, man, like I would give anything to be able to write something like that. But I was going to say about this, like we're talking about this verse here now, is, I woke up right here in a pool of sweat with a box of pills and you. So that's stage setting. And then he says, yeah, and I'm going to keep my head, I'm going to keep my cool. I'm so in love with you. That's almost where it feels like he's deliberately not being fancy or flowery with his language because it's such a direct expression of sort of thanks and gratitude and appreciation to someone that he doesn't want to adorn it with any sort of poetry. He just wants that to be very, very genuine and very, very honest. You know what I mean? Like I get that sense from it. And then of course you get that flip on the back end of it. Yes, in another world, nothing was like this. So it's a really interesting way to come at it, I think.
And I'm not able to see it maybe as nuanced as it was. I see this as a little ode to his savior at this moment.
Yeah.
And then there's a scene shift. So you have the instrumental. I forget how many bars it is, but you have an instrumental, beautiful instrumental. And then you've got the I don't know, the killer of all killer verses.
Yeah.
Which is, I've never heard anyone get taken down so hard in a song.
Oh, I know. The last verse, you mean? Yeah. Yeah.
With the sneer. I could see, because he has a sneer sometimes, right? Tom could sneer. He could sneer with his words. He could sneer with his face. He could sneer
just his
sometimes.
tone. Yeah.
When he had that way, it was very powerful. And this is let loose in a way that's, I don't want to say brutal because he wasn't a brutal guy, but this is a takedown.
100%. Yeah, I know. I mean, and it's funny because my listeners sometimes comment on Facebook and everyone kind of points to that last verse as being the only time where you can see Tom really digging into someone. Like we talk about the word accused. This is not any accusation on him. He's pointing a finger squarely at someone. And I think we all know who, right? I mean, we don't want to sort of besmirch anyone on this podcast, but it's pretty flipping clear if you read the history and you read where this album's coming from, I think.
You don't know. It's all there. It's whatever it was, which I assume that's what it was. It hit him with his own values. So it was about whomever, about her, but to me, it showed what he valued the most.
Yeah.
Because, you fell on your face most of all.
Yeah.
Most of all.
Yeah.
So he just gave a litany of what he thought was the big takedown, what he thought was not okay to the extreme.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, he couldn't gloss it because it was just too legit for him. It was too to his core that he couldn't. He just actually had that spirit that was honest and retribution and anger, hurt. A lot of this is fueled by hurt. And
of course.
The other thing is where I'm going to go also is I think a lot of this is fueled by fear. So it's not, look.
They go hand in hand too, though, Nick, don't they? I mean, they're sort of two sides of the same coin in a lot of ways.
And I can't besmirch his memory. I didn't know the fellow, of course, but Tom was tough on his father in terms of, he was just tough on his father and his Aunt Pearl or whatever. He was tough on them. He really loved both of his wives.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
And he loved them. It's as I could imagine it, right? As I hear what he said, and it is so there's hurt and fear for the future because he's not in a good place. It's not you're a terrible person. It's I am hurt, lonely. I might not make it out of here, and I'm lashing. And
Yeah.
well, who do you lash at? Who do you lash out at? You lash at the ones that are closest and have
Yeah.
gotten to you. It's tough. It's tough to go through that and try to put yourself into a position where you'd say, I don't want to tempt you to be true.
Yeah. I don't want to mean anything to you. I mean, that is, like I said, discussed on the episode, that there's such a finality to that, right? That's the line in the sand. Like, there's no going back from this. Once you said those words, there is no going back from that. You can't roll that back. And I think that as you're talking about this, it's, if we frame this as Tom, he's lashing out at someone, but also the fact that I think when someone betrays your sort of almost your entire moral framework, that is irreconcilable then. And I think that, we know that Tom tried for a lot of years. I mean, this probably had been going on since mid 80s where the cracks were really starting to show from the interviews and things we've heard. So when you're trying so hard and you're compromising that moral framework that you have to such an extent that you're almost walking away from who you are, you can see why eventually when we get this last verse, it's almost a mea culpa. It's almost like there's no more. Like I'm going to write this line, I'm going to put it in this song, and then it's done.
Speaking of done, so there's a claim that there's one performance of this, and there's a YouTube that has audio only.
Yeah,
and I think I shared with you. He comes in with the guitar, and he's like 5-6 beats per minute slower on this one version, and he does make a mistake in this. He makes, I think, 2 or 3 mistakes in this verse. I don't think this was tolerable for him to experience this. You can't experience this. You can't. He's not an actor like that.
Yeah.
This is too real. And he did it once. He didn't do the verses right. I think he just was like, I'm not touching this thing again. I'm not touching this. And that's something of the power of it. And then, that's something of the power of it is like they tried it once. It didn't go well. And he just couldn't touch it again. I'm going to move on to Won't Last Long, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And I got a different take on this.
Okay.
This is one of the ones where I think I'm wrong.
Okay. Excellent.
And it only came to me like in the last couple of days. So that's why I'm just going to throw it out to you. First of all, the intro. That's Keith. That's Keith and Charlie.
Right.
That's I think Keith called them inversions. And you hear it on Sticky Fingers when they were really doing it. The two of them would kind of try to surprise each other. So to me, that felt like an homage to Keith and Charlie. The intro there, that's particular type of syncopation that they do that wasn't characteristic, I think, of the Heartbreakers, especially not characteristic of Steve.
Oh no, this, and especially because you've got that fill that leads you in is on the and. It's not on the 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's in between the beats, which is just. And I'd commented that you'd never have heard Stan do that ever. I mean, Stan would never have played it that way. But Steve's a jazz guy, and Steve's a fusion guy, and he's got those weird little ways that he can subvert your expectations. I mean, I'd said that Won't Last Long to me would fit on Into the Great Wide Open just hand in glove. Because and Into the Great Wide Open's got another couple of Stonesy moments on that record, but it's got those 2 acoustic guitars playing in different positions, and then you get that 3rd guitar in the middle, and then you get some overdub guitar later on. It's got that big Jeff Lynne feel to the production to it, to me,
I do. Now, when he sings "Don't Shake Me Up," that's a Jagger.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that phrasing, it's Jagger phrasing.
Good call. Yeah, I like it.
Right. So, but here's the thing with this that that I'm wondering, I'm down, but it won't last long, right? So we're kind of trained to feel that is in some ways a very optimistic take. I'm way down. I'm going to sing a song about, I know it's not going to last long. But half my brain has gone away. Half my brain is gone so far away. I'm just going to throw out there that at this time, I think it was around this time, I think it was in Mike's book where he was in therapy and the therapist said, you can't live where you're at. You can't survive.
Right.
At this level of low functioning or clinical depression, how depressed he was. I'm not sure how that period related to the studio session, but I don't know when it was written. So in this general period, he was going through some very, very serious depression, as well as the use of substances, including heroin. I'm looking at this as it's ambiguous regarding whether it won't last long because he goes up or he's done.
One way or the other. Yeah.
And I never thought of it that way. I always thought of this as part of the hope side. But I see this as almost, it's the hope side is alluded to, but the subtext, because this guy, he was sharp. Petty was sharp. He wasn't, I said he was optimistic, but he was also he was clear-eyed in some ways. And I wonder if he knew that this moment wasn't going to last, but which direction it flowed to, not clear.
Yeah.
Not clear. Because isn't it the bridge? Half my brain is gone.
Yeah, and that bridge makes the song, because this is a really quite a simple song and a bit. I sort of talked in the episode. There's some repetition in there, which I don't always love, and I think with that, any sort of narrative that you place over top of this, Petty could have done more lyrically with this one, I think. But that bridge to me is just like, well, first of all, that little kind of very psychedelic, Doorsy, stoner rock kind of thing that Benmont does on the organ is sensational. And then when Tom comes in, they EQ his vocal differently. So you get this dreamlike softness, but it's way forward in the mix, and half my brain has gone away. It sort of takes the song and moves it somewhere you're just not expecting it to go. And I love it when he does that.
Well, here's where we're going to differ. And here's where your audience is going to push the stop button. If they haven't done it already, if I haven't bored them already. And you had suggested that this song could be contracted, right? That this song could be.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'll disagree.
Okay.
I think this is a near-death scene.
Okay.
I think the end is an imagining of coming close to death.
Okay.
Including that tape noise. Including that.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take. Yeah, I like it.
This last minute is like his imagining of a road that could go where, with that tape noise, that's an end. That could be an end.
Very interesting. I like the interpretation.
Well, whether it is complete and utter BS or not, I'm just saying it hit me that he does, even in that state, what was he trying to do? What was he trying to do with that minute? That's what you prompted me to think about.
Right.
You prompted me to think about, okay, this guy, he's laying it all out. So he's naked, right, to the world. And he himself, I don't say it's his producers, he himself, he's the one who said, don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Yeah.
So he knows. Someone asked him about Echo. He goes, that one was long. Like, come on.
Yeah. That's Paul Zollo. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
It was all right. That's a non-answer. That's a non-answer. Long. That's malarkey. Right? It's not long. It's scary as all heck. That's what it is about. It's not that it's long.
Yeah.
So here, what's he doing with this minute? That he was very tight on seconds. And to me, this is, again, I'm going off in a direction because I'm seeing this as not necessarily a successful recovery
Right.
chronicled in this. It is in the midst of the question when you're in recovery is, do you emerge or not? And this last minute of this song, after half his brain has gone away, which is pretty rough,
Right. Yeah.
it's playing it out in a way that maybe isn't as upbeat as my first interpretation of it was.
Yeah.
And then I got to go to Billy the Kid.
I think you've sold me. I think you've sold me on that, Nick. I think you've sold me on this. Yeah. I think you've sold me. Yeah. It's at least given me a lot of tasty food for thought. So yeah.
Hey, well then my job is done. Bye.
Hey, Billy the Kid. Let's talk about Billy the Kid.
Again, because I listened to this thing too much, I went from seeing this as, which it is, evoking his Cowboys and Indians background.
Right.
He watched that stuff. That's what they did in the 60s, early 60s. They played Cowboys and Indians and Billy the Kid and all these legendary, it's like there's a popular culture icon there. So this one is interesting to me. It's got recovery, but I think it's coming right out of that. I think it's purposeful. That's why I'm talking about it as an album.
Yeah.
I think the sequence there is purposeful. And I'm not saying that I'm the only one who's thought of this, but I went down hard. And the gun reference, to me, that's a needle.
Okay.
So to me, it hits with a needle and he's out. Like he got now. It really stung me when you went to the other side. Okay. Now, what am I trying to make of this? There's another character here that isn't any of the characters before. And here's my imagining. Right. This is Nick going off on his own. Could be a real character. It could be a fictional character. But think about this theme of recovery. Think about this guy who is on edge. It might work out. It might not work out. It could just be another rock and roll casualty at that time.
Right.
And imagine, in recovery, you try to have people with you that will help you. If it's formal, you might have a sponsor, but you just might have peers who are going through things and might give you some support. And so in my mind, he was with someone who he thought of as a support.
Okay.
And they went over to the other side.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Part of his relapse, whether they provided or they used with him or they triggered him to use. In his mind, it was someone who I trusted in this terrible state because he said it, he was surrounding himself with people in this stage of his life that he would have never in a million years wanted to surround himself with. Okay. There's a whole cast of characters. It's not in any book, but that who were there knew. Because when you got a rich person with a drug problem, it attracts people that are not that savory.
Yeah. Well, it's a good interpretation because, I went down hard like Billy the Kid. Well, who killed Billy the Kid? Pat Garrett. Was Pat Garrett friends with Billy the Kid at one point? Absolutely was. So there is that betrayal element, even just with choosing Billy the Kid as the close horse for what he's going to put over this.
Wow. Yeah, you're right.
I haven't thought of that before.
I don't know. Yeah, so it's like a memory of using and then having someone like enable, I don't know.
Yeah.
Betrayal. And then the idea of betrayal in addiction is like, doesn't even make sense in some ways because you're not fully yourself. You're kind of controlled by the addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway. Great line in it too, though, right? You caught me in the bedroom, cotton fever in a sweat. That's a great line too. Again, as Petty's processing all this stuff, he still has that ability. I think I've said this on the show definitely before. I think in 95% of every song I've reviewed so far, there's at least one line where you just shake your head and go, yeah, no one else could have written that. That's just no one else would have written that.
So that's where I got it from. It's like, because to me, he's withdrawing.
Right.
He's sweating. So he's in withdrawal. He's in active withdrawal. Cotton mouth. He's sweating.
Right.
He's feeling like he wants to be dead. And I'm just this parenthetical. I only know this secondhand. I somehow got through the 80s and didn't take any cocaine. I
Right.
somehow got through and didn't do any drugs. And I wound up working with a lot of people who've had very serious substance abuse problems. So I've learned
course.
sort of secondhand. I don't know except through that secondhand experience, but this sense of withdrawal can be, you almost wish you were dead. From some withdrawals are incredibly painful. And then that person maybe helping through one withdrawal, then part of a relapse episode that was
Right.
there. Anyway, I'm making stuff up.
Hey, we're all making something because we're just doing interpretation. I think that, we put caveats on caveats and we hedge everything. Everything we're saying here is, basically we didn't know Tom, we weren't there, and we're just speculating. But I think that's, as fans, I think that that's a fine thing to do because we're coming at it from a position of some knowledge about what was going on in Tom's life, and we've all read this content, and I think that this is what we do, right? I mean, this is where we do try and dig into this. I don't think we do need to feel bad about taking some swings for the fences about what these lyrics mean and what this period of Tom's life, right? So yeah, absolutely.
So now the next song, I'm going to give you another one that maybe isn't a nice thing to say. So I don't want to fight. I love Mike, full stop. And I just love Mike. And it hurt me when in reading his book, Tom was...
I know exactly what you're going to say. Yep.
It hurt me because this is about the most gentle guy who's been through, he had a moment, when I think it was amphetamines or something, that he had a moment where he almost died.
Yeah.
His love affair with his wife, is that the most beautiful thing? I don't know enough. I don't know all the details, but it just seems like they love each other and they've been through it. And I just think the world of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
As someone, anyway, I come at it from a Mike perspective, maybe. When you're not a beautiful singer, when you're not a a talent that's going to be on the talent shows, the voice is just clearly fantastic. And you are a fantastic musician and you try to step out and sing and be your own guy. The big guy should give you a hug and say, you're the man.
Yeah.
Take it twice, man. And you rock. And he didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I read that too, I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming because Mike didn't give us a lot of that in the book. And I didn't want that. I didn't want any I'm not a big fan of dirt in those sort of things. It's not what I'm looking for. But I think it was really important for him to put that in the book where he talks about Tom telling him that these songs are, basically said these songs are garbage. Who do you think's going to listen to these? Everything else, right? But I think it's to make sure that we get this sense that Mike isn't, Tom Petty wasn't an idol to Mike. He was a real person and he was a three-dimensional person who had that dark side to him as well. And I think it's really important when you're, but any of these sort of sugar-coated biographies you read where everything's great and everyone's amazing and this guy was just a genius and he's spectacular. You need a little bit of that in there to ground that. Because otherwise, if you don't have that part of the book, then all the good stuff that he talks about doesn't carry as much whack to me. It doesn't have as much punch, I mean,
there's no boss in the world who's a saint.
100%.
Tom Petty was the boss. He ran a big business. He made some very difficult decisions and he had very high integrity.
Yeah.
And I think the world of this guy as a man, as a person, high integrity in a field where low integrity is all around. And I think I'm talking about Tom.
Yeah.
Tom's integrity created, much of why so many people love him, but also incredible strains for him.
Of course.
And to be a boss and to have high integrity. So he had, this is Tom. He was honest in something. He wasn't trying to hurt him. He was trying to be honest
Yeah.
with his own opinion, which wasn't that good an opinion because he put down Keith Richards. He said, "You're not as bad as Keith Richards." That was the quote. Now, to me, Keith Richards has a whole. His vocals are like in a completely new genre. What his whole songs are complete. It's different. It's never going to be, popular or whatever. It's different. So it's not like Tom is the authority as to what's good.
Of course.
He wasn't.
Of course. No, he wasn't. I mean, this goes back to what I was saying, right? About as fans, we do have to be mindful not to lionize these people that we adore to that degree where everything they say is sacrosanct and everything they say is true. Clearly it isn't, because Tom was wrong. I mean, I do. It's the one sad thing you think, hey, don't you wish that Tom had seen Mike go on to front the Dirty Knobs? Just you know what I mean? 'Cause it would have been so... Yeah.
Okay, that song, it's a great song.
Yeah.
To my mind, it hangs with anything. I can't wait to hear it. If you do it great live, it would have been great for him to hear, for Tom Petty to hear that.
Agreed.
And how much love there is for Mike being Mike. So here's where I'm going to throw something out that is very low probability. Okay. But what the heck? You get what you pay for, right? So I'm not getting a big fee for this. I don't want to fight. And there's a reference to, by the way, not his line. It was Tom's line. I'm a lover.
Yeah.
That's Tom. But you got a pretty face, but it's such a way. So there's a line in there that appears to be directing it towards some female character. And I don't know how, if at all, this is autobiographical, and Mike might answer what it was all about. But reading the book, I wonder if there was a layer, a very deep, like maybe a minority layer or a subtext of "I don't want to fight," having Tom be the subject.
100%, 100%. That's exactly the way I interpret it. 100%. Yeah, I think it's one of those that you sneak in. Right, I think it's because you're singing about the boss, but I mean, yeah, there's tension there, and I got to it's just, some of it is, and I've kind of written down in my notes for prepping for today too that I bet Nick really likes this song because it's got a bit of grit to it, it's got a bit of a punk, garagey, lo-fi edge to it, right? And it's got that repetition, but I think it works here because it's that style of song, But yeah, you're always laughing at me when nothing's really funny. I mean, we talked about that. I don't know. I can't remember exactly when that phone call happened, but there's definitely some stuff in there. You think, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to fight. And Mike wasn't a fighter. He was he was a collaborator and an appeaser. He was that kind of guy who did want to make things work. So
I just have I don't know him. Hopefully, I don't know. I'd love to meet him, but I have such a fondness for him.
Yeah.
For Mike. Like even he seemed so self-effacing, uncomfortable being out front. He was a big guy, thin guy, really, super handsome guy, but seemed a little shy.
Yeah.
And love his wife, and a great but understated musician. He had conflict, with Stan for a while there.
Of course.
Stan's a boss in my mind. Stan is a guy who, gets what he says what he wants and tries to do what he wants. Another really amazing character. I don't know if Mike, I hope he felt as appreciated. I guess that's it. I hope he felt as appreciated through this, because what a great friend he was.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we segued off into talking about Mike here, and that's great because I'm a huge fan too. And I mean, the book just reinforced that. I think that Mike Campbell, when musical history washes out, I think will go down as one of the all-time great musicians, rock and roll musicians. He is at that level where if you just don't even look at the Heartbreakers catalog. If he'd only done the session work and the collaborations he'd done with other people, he'd be a Hall of Famer. He's that good, right? So to have both of those things and to constantly put himself in his own sort of his own creative outlets to one side because he knew his friend. That's just extraordinary to me. As an artist, but also as a human being. I mean, he's just, Mike's the best, man. I love the bones off Mike. I mean, again, I'd love to meet him. Don't know if it'll ever happen. I did reach out for the book tour, but they didn't have time to schedule in. So, but I'll keep trying because I hope one day I can get to talk to him. So,
I hope he's so successful and happy and busy with his life that he doesn't have time to talk.
I
He's
totally
just
agree.
living his life. He's got
Yeah.
his dogs. He's got his fantastic, his marriage with Marcy.
Scott Marcy, yeah.
I think the world of him. So this one's for me. Go to the next one. To me, it was The Last DJ prelude.
Right.
So now there's some hope. He's getting real with the music, getting real with the people. Some self-reflection in a positive way. You don't even know what you want till it's walking away. You don't even know what you have till it laughs in your face. So this guy got, Tom Petty got slapped around a lot in different ways, different times. This does feel like, okay, I've got to do stuff for myself, which is a good recovery tack. I've got to do things for myself. Well, what is The Last DJ? To me, it's very optimistic. It's very honest. It got slammed.
Yeah.
He did for him, Last DJ, where, it wasn't understood well, but it was like an honest critique of where the popular music had gone, but
Absolutely.
from a position, I take the music seriously. I love the music, so I'm going to say this in my own words. It's not going to be popular, but this is in a way, the Last DJ is this one's for me, to my mind.
Yeah.
No More. I don't know. When I see that sun go down, my mind begins to clear. What do you take of that? What do you think of that, Tom?
I always forget about this song for some reason. And yet every time I hear it, I think this might be, apart from sort of the big songs on there, apart from Echo and Room at the Top and Swinging, like the big songs that we all just hold dear, this might be my next favorite song on the album because the arrangement of it, the instrumentation of it, Mike playing that dobro at the end, that national I mean, it's just gorgeous. It really, for me, highlights how good they were as a band because it's sometimes easy to forget that when you're playing rock and roll, you've got, you need to be able to hit those strings real hard and get that attack and get that bite out of your strings. But you also get this band that can strip everything back and play like this. Just astonishing. I think it's superb. The progression, actually, a song called Black Gold by Soul Asylum? Do you remember that band?
Yeah, I remember
They did a Black Gold and a Venom Sound.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
It's a really similar, it's a very different tempo and a different key and everything, but it's got that to it. And I just, like I said, this song is stunning. It's got that same kind of, it hits me the same way as It'll All Work Out on Light Me Up, I've had enough, where it's that little breath. Let's unplug things. Let's go back to, well, it's not strings, but they get that almost that orchestral sense to it. And it's just superb. I think it's a superb song, all through.
So I got 3. I got No More. This one's for me, and Rhino Skin. I don't really say anything about those 3, except I see those as on the recovery track.
Right.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be legit to myself. I got to leather up. I got to be tough as nails.
Yeah.
And here's a future orientation packet. So that's the kind of hope packet.
Yeah.
The recovery is going to work out packet. I got 2 more songs.
Yeah, and but just to cap that, though, what you're saying there, it makes sense to sequence them where they are too, right?
Yes.
When we get to the end of the album, because we are going to get that turnaround. And we're going to finish. But okay, what's your next one? About to give out?
Yeah. I'm taking those 3. Those 3. I don't dive into them in my own thinking very much because they form. I see them as, he didn't give up, and this is not nihilistic, and this isn't. This is a way forward. So that's how I understand them, and I don't really go too much beyond that for that because that worked, right? That path worked, and I really do see Last DJ as sort of a manifestation,
right,
of that. Now, about to give out. I played this song with my son Lucas at a family reunion.
Oh, nice.
It was the most fun thing. And I think we were this song it means a lot to me as a fun song.
Yeah.
Here we have we talked earlier on about the nostalgic or the youth of the hard scrabble northern Florida.
Right.
This is like almost losing himself in it. So this song is like he could allow himself for these 3 minutes to be back there. And he says Ricky and Dickie, which to me is going back to the epics.
Right. Okay. Right. I like
This is
it.
Ricky
Yeah.
and Dickie. These are the characters from when he was just forming as a
Right.
middle teenager. He's probably 16 years old. And this is his, before all this, before Mike. This is
Yeah.
really early proto stuff. Again, like Billy the Kid, you got Davy Crockett.
Yeah.
And Roy Rogers. It's like going back to that black and white TV scene with 2 channels. And then this really neat little so it's almost all fun except for 2 things. The last vignette is pretty modern with Abraham
and Moses. Yeah.
It got a little weird. Now that would not have been on TV in 1963 with him waking up in the bushes nude. So fast forwards it there. And then just so that we don't just chuckle it away, the title and the line. This is like he's about to give out.
Well, I mean, it's sort of a hedonistic song, right? I mean, it is sort of that. It's a song about excess, really, in a way, especially the last songs. But to me, this one is just it's him doing pure Dylan. Like it's got that sort of sense of it's high. I mean, this would lyrically it fits exactly on Highway 61 because you've got a cast of oddball characters, and it's this kind of freewheeling roller coaster, just a rock and roll. You know what I mean? It's got that sense of fun to it. Yeah, I know I'm about to give out. We're gonna infer some darkness and some depth because it's on Echo, of course we are. But also, I think it's one of those where I'm about to give out, as in I've just, I'm things are just going crazy, Mom. We're out here having a good time. I don't think there necessarily is a bad end in this, but give out could just be, well, I'm going to blow out for a week and I'm going to sleep for 3 days. It could just mean that, and I think that sometimes. Tom gave us, he did it on Wildflowers too, right? Where we got those little, we got just a couple of songs here and there just to break it up, just so we're not too down all the time. I'm not sure this one fits into the narrative of Echo at Echo's heart, personally. But
so I do.
Okay.
Because I think there's a theme of this remembrance.
Right.
And I think that's really at the core of Echo is hearkening back. And what is this hearkening back to? It's hearkening back to the reason why people use is they're having fun.
Right.
This is the upside. This is the party.
Right.
This is how it gets going. This is you wake up in a bush with Abraham Moses. They got no clothes on, but you get a great story of it. Nobody gets hurt, but it's part of the same narrative to me. I link it in that way. Yes, it's innocent. Yes, it's nostalgic. But it's part of the same, it's of the same cloth. Of the flip side is if what starts out as fun ends up being overwhelming. And this is hearkening when it was fun. So that's just me. The one that now we're at the last song, which to me like is the book that you do have the bookends to me, or you have the frame.
100%.
You have Room at the Top and you have One More Day, One More Night. And I imagine them both having a demo of Tom with an acoustic and it being almost impossibly sad. And then the team comes and goes, all right, let's pull this thing up.
Right.
Pull this thing up. To me, this is very near death. So to end the album with a song where he's very near death. Again, I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's just how I'm thinking.
Yeah, for sure.
It's profoundly not uplifting. He's not out of the woods at the end.
Right.
Okay. You could have said, like, if he, there were some other songs that could have ended the album that were more hope-oriented. We've talked about it.
Well, here's the thing. When we talk about sequencing a lot, especially with my co-host John Paulson on the album wrap episodes. Where else could you put this song on the album? That's the problem. Is you could close with something else, but this doesn't fit anywhere else. This has to close this album. You know, it's the same way that Wake Up Time ends Wildflowers. You can't put Wake Up Time in track 11, right?
No, you know what you could do in the old days? This could have been, side B.
Side A.
One.
Right, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you could have two narratives. You could have the side A and the side B, and you could have this, if you had a hopeful overall theme of successful recovery and hope is the ultimate message, you could have parallel, how I would think of an album, you could have parallel narratives on side A and B, starting with Room at the Top on A and starting with One More Day, One More Night on B, and then move through to some sort of resolution.
Okay.
So to me, having the whole album ending with One More Day, One More Night, and having him just close, I mean, I think.
Do you not think there's an ambiguity to it, though, to Nick? Because One More Day, One More Night, you can interpret that as him saying, I've just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I've just got to take one day at a time, and soon be far away from here is the last line on the album. There is also that, again, we talk about this lots with Petty about is this duality of meaning in a lot of his writing. There is a sense too that's why I like it, because I wouldn't want a clean ending to this story. I don't think it would feel right for the album, right? Because he's not being concrete in saying, I am going to make it. There's lots of I think so, and I hope so, and maybe, and possibly. I think if you had that sort of ultimate resolution where there was a song about, it's okay now, the clouds have lifted, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I don't think the album would feel as satisfying because it wouldn't feel as real. He's not being prescriptive about any path to redemption or to recovery or any of those themes that we're talking about. He's just giving us, this is what it's really like when you're in it. And this is what it was really like now while I'm in it,
And I like that you put it in the present tense, because this is how I read it. I read this in the present tense.
Yeah.
It's not looking back to a time when he was in the depths, and then you always have the stories of, I hit bottom and then I kind of, no, I think he's bottom. He's seeing himself close to bottom here. The fact that it's the last line is, one more day and I'll collect my pay.
Yeah.
And I'll soon be far away from here. That's not a very hopeful end right there. That I'll be, that's, first of all, it's first person singular. And it's not, I'll be overcoming what I have here with my loved ones.
Right. Yeah.
And to me, again, after all this, one more day and I'll collect my pay. Well, when do you collect your pay? You collect your pay when you're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll be out of here. Where are you going to go?
On to the next job.
So that's hard for me to reconcile that as an upbeat ending.
I don't think. Oh yeah, no, I certainly wasn't arguing that it's upbeat. Like I said, I think what I like about it is that it is ambiguous. It does leave it open. We don't know. Soon before I'll collect my pace, I'll be soon far away from here. It doesn't tell us where, and he doesn't tell us in what direction or what state he's in. Just that I think it's that sense that there's a transition going to happen. That there is somewhere far away from here, and that's where he's heading to. Right. So where that is, we don't know. But I like that. There's a brilliant artist that I interviewed for my Artist Conversation series, Amelia McLean, who her album's coming out soon. And she does the same thing. Like the sequence that I got the album into preview, listen to anyway. The last song does the same thing. It doesn't end on the root. And it gives you that sense that, in the movie, when the person walks away into the sunset or walks down a lit street and you don't know where they're going, you just know the story's not finished. And sometimes not having an ending, so you want to come back and find out where this person gets to, is way more compelling than having everything written, tied up in a neat little bow and everything's sunshine and rainbows. So
Yeah, let me just be a downer one more time on this.
that's good.
With the recovery work, some of it is coming to the terms of wherever I go, there I am.
Right.
That leaving, going somewhere else is not solving anything. You will be there wherever you go. So the idea of him just going is not just going and finding someplace new, the next gig or whatever. It doesn't fit with the heaviness or the depth of the distress.
Right.
It feels to me like the going is escaping, which is not dealing with it one way or another. The escaping, you can escape, geographically, or you can escape existentially. So it's a downer rather than ambiguous, because the options that I'm hearing out of this are all not, I'm going to take a deep breath. I've got a few people who really love me, and I'm going to have a lot of pain right here and get through this. That's not where yes, one more day or night, but then it gets resolved as I'm punching my ticket. It doesn't get resolved like I got this, I can just hang in there. It's like it's resolved with one more day, I'll collect my pay and soon I'll be far away from here. So to me, it's a bleak, powerful, magical ending to this album that was so hot in terms of what it brought up, that is like, we're not touching it. We're not touching it for like decades.
Right.
And they don't even want to speak it. And I think the fact that in my mind, I got to the point where I saw this resolving, not positively, ambiguously, yes, but not positively.
Right.
Just made the whole album that much more important and heavy to me.
Yeah.
So thanks for letting me talk all this time, man. I do appreciate it.
Awesome, mate. Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, anytime I get a chance to talk to someone who has actually thought about music just beyond, and there's nothing wrong with just enjoying a pop song. I mean, I love that too. There's lots of good, frilly, fluffy, light, throwaway pop songs that I love. And Tom wrote a lot of them too. Like, he wrote a load of great upbeat, you can dance to it, you can move your feet to it. But anytime I get the chance to talk to someone who's thought about something at this level and can articulate it and can challenge me and is willing to be challenged, of course I'm going to grab that with both hands, aren't I? Of course I am. So
all the best, man. And you know what? You are providing such a service for the future, because this was a real artist, a world-class artist that many people will not appreciate, because he did value being popular.
Yeah.
Right? He valued that, and he was popular. And a lot of the snobs say, well, then he's not a great artist. Well, no, this was a great artist who was also popular. And you're providing that information for future historians to give this man, this genius, his due.
I was just amazed that there wasn't another Tom Petty podcast. There were no Tom Petty. I mean, it's the only one still. John Scott had one for a little while when he first released his book, but it's the only one. I mean, that is bizarre to me, because there are thousands about Kiss. So if Kiss has got 100,000 podcasts, why isn't Tom Petty? So, but I very much appreciate those very kind words, Nick. Thank you so much.
It's true.
Before we go, I should let people know that you do have an album. You did have a new album that came out, well, it's a little while ago now, but I did get it on vinyl. You were very kind to send me a copy of that. And from the publishing company,
it's an EP.
A little EP. How many songs is it? 12?
It was printed in Canada.
Yeah. Great company, by the way. And they sent me another album with that package. They sent me your debut again as well, which I already had, but I was very grateful, and I've given away to a friend. But the Playmatics, they sent me as well, this band from France.
That's right.
Phenomenal band. I was like, who that? Why are these guys not famous, and why are these guys not popular? So,
man, don't worry about my music. I just want to say one thing. Don't worry about my music. The fact that there's a song that you liked that is like a really deep track, and that you listened and you gave me your own opinion on it. I really do appreciate that you listened to my music, man. So, hey, I don't want to put my music in the same in the same venue with talking about the great master, Tom Petty. I appreciate you giving my music a listen. It just is personally meaningful to me. That's all. But thank you for what you do, and I'm going to keep listening and pinging you day after day. How's that?